So I am going to start recording and also make sure transcripts are enabled. Okay, we're good. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining session 7B, Evolving the Online Equity Rubric. This session is being recorded and you also have access to live transcripts. Those transcripts will be updated after, and so what you will receive later on are the transcripts that have been updated. At the bottom of the Zoom window, you will see a closed caption button and you will see the live transcript text underneath the button. So you may select them on or off as you prefer. So please post your questions to our panelists using the chat function. And towards the end of the hour, we'll share how we can continue the conversation online and share some additional resources to support your teaching. Now I'd like to hand the microphone over to our wonderful presenters, Brielle Plump, Rachel Dyer, and James Bany.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cheryl. And thank you all for being here. My name is Brielle Plump, and myself, along with two wonderful colleagues of mine, are going to be talking to you today about how we have evolved the Peralta Online Equity Rubric. So give me just a moment as I work to share my screen. And if James, you can give me a thumbs up to let me know if you can see that screen. Fantastic. Okay. So before we officially kick things off, I just want to take a moment to express my appreciation and gratitude for the evolution of the Online Equity Conference. This is the second year in a row that this conference is happening, and it's just such an honor to be able to present some work that's really, really dear to my heart, and really does come from Peralta and the Online Equity Rubric that they created only less than a decade ago. So I'm really excited to talk about my experience with that rubric. And so we'll jump right in. As I'm presenting and as we go from host to host, please feel free to contribute your ideas in the chat, ask questions, and we are going to just jump right in because we do want to make sure we leave some time at the end for questions. And so know that there's also going to be live Q&A opportunity at the end. All right, so our agenda for today is to share with you sort of our journey in evolving the Peralta Online Equity Rubric. We want to first start with where we started, which is with the rubric that Peralta created. And it's a faculty-facing resource. And one of the things that we identified about that resource is that we felt like it could be applicable beyond just the classroom. And so we noted that we have concerns with regards to equity throughout our campus. And I'm sure a lot of folks can relate wherever you're working or whatever institution you're a part of. So we wanted to figure out a way to adapt the rubric for staff and administrators so that they could apply the same equity practices in their roles. And so we found a solution to that. And essentially, we just reformatted and rebranded the rubric so that it could be more inclusive of all roles on campus. And we want to share with you exactly how we did that and the course training that we created to do so. And then finally, we'll talk about next steps in our process and invite you to share your ideas for how we can continue with this evolution of the rubric and the Peralta Online Equity Training. So first things first, you've met me, I'm Brielle Plump, and I wear a couple different hats around here. I've been working with the Peralta Community College district for, oh my gosh, almost 6 years, and was recently working as part of the online equity team at Peralta. And I've also worked as an adjunct faculty member for Moreno Valley College, which is part of the Riverside Community College School District. And that is really where this work took place. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and let my other co-hosts introduce themselves.
I'm Rachel Dyer. I also teach at Moreno Valley College, Social Work, Human Services, Counseling Practices program. And just very excited to be with you today and to share with you the work that we're doing. You can see here, we had on the slide countries. You're probably wondering, what is that? You know, what are places that you visited, that you're interested in visiting? You know, thinking about some of our experiences with other cultures helps us to be mindful in this work as well as we're developing the criteria and expanding our minds and then applying it inward. So it's just something that we're sharing about ourselves. So for me, it's Italy, but Jimmy, I'll pass it on over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is James Bany. I go by Jimmy. And I'm a sociology faculty member here at Moreno Valley College out in Riverside County. Yeah, in addition to teaching sociology, teaching online, I'm involved in equity work on our Student Equity and Achievement Committee and other ways on campus as well. So thank you all so much for being here.
All right. So I'll go ahead and jump into our presentation, and we'll start with what is this Peralta Online Equity Rubric? Depending on whether or not you've been part of the faculty, staff, or administration at Peralta, or if you're an instructor, or if you've been to this conference before, you may have heard this term thrown around or not. Essentially, the Peralta Online Equity Rubric is a rubric that was created by Peralta faculty, initially for Peralta faculty, to help raise the bar and how inclusive our classes are. And this rubric was created, I want to say in 2013, but I'm sure there's someone in here who can fact check that for me. But it's been around for some time. And of course, when a good thing gets going, word spreads. So that Peralta Online Rubric has not only evolved internally within the district, but is now something that is used all over the state in conjunction with a lot of other popular rubrics you may have heard of, such as the CVC OEI rubric. Perhaps you work with Quality Matters. There's a lot of other great tools out there that can help us ensure quality in our courses online or otherwise. But what made this rubric really unique is that it was built by faculty in response to a need to embrace diversity on their campus. And it focuses specifically on equity, which is not always something that's addressed in those rubrics that we often see. So the rubric has been something I have learned about over years working with Peralta. And when I started working at Moreno Valley College, we were thinking about ways in which we could advance equity as we were responding to more and more classes being online in light of the pandemic, and figured that we should start with, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to start with a tool that we knew already worked. And so we started exploring the rubric and thinking about ways that we might bring it to Moreno Valley College and sort of make it our own. So before we talk about the ways that we adapted the rubric and evolved the rubric, I want to make sure everyone's familiar with the basics, because it is fortunately a pretty concise rubric. It's got 8 criteria. And for the sake of everybody getting on the same page, I'm actually going to stop the slide deck and actually open up the rubric itself so it's just a little bigger for you. Hopefully that's a little bit more legible. And I'll just talk briefly about the 8 criteria. So the first criteria within the Peralta Online Equity Rubric is technology. And I'll be focusing on the right-hand column, which is the measure that we would use to ensure that a course is exemplary in this particular criteria. But you'll see that we've got both incomplete and aligned measures as well. But of course, we're always striving for exemplary. So on the right-hand column, you'll see that we articulate that a course has met this criteria when the technologies that are used in the course are used in ways that amplify student voices and foster an inclusive course community. In conjunction with that, you'll see in that middle column that indicates a course is aligned, that means that that course also clarifies how technology is going to support learning and what is the required technology for that course. And that course would not only provide the technology resources, but alternatives should students not have access to that technology. So it's a fairly tall order when you're relying completely on online services to support your course, right? But it's number 1 for a reason, because it's the baseline, right? If your course is online, then students have to understand the communication channel through which they're going to be engaging with the course and communicating with their instructor. So it's paramount that technology is well articulated and resources are offered, and that students really understand why this technology is going to benefit their learning, and that they have alternatives should they have issues with access. Next, we have student resources and support. Student access, students should be able to access the relevant support services or resources at the college or elsewhere as a part of course-related activities. So a course that meets this criteria not only points to resources that are available on campus, but also virtual resources for students. And one thing I like to think about when I think about this criteria is also those just-in-time resources, right? So if you have an assignment for your students that requires them to do some research, that might be a good time to remind them about the services at the library or the online library, right? Often that information is included in an orientation or a syllabus, but presenting that information when it's just in time, right when students need it, is what really takes a class from aligned to exemplary. All right, moving a little quickly now, I want to point out that the third criteria is universal design for learning. Students identify UDL principles that support their learning and are invited to make suggestions about how to improve course activities with UDL. So UDL is a standard practice in a lot of online course development. I also am an instructional designer, and I know it's one of the main set of principles that we use when we're designing a course. So you might be familiar with it. If not, know that the basic elements of UDL include providing multiple means of representation, action and expression, and or engagement in your course. So a course that is exemplary in this area would not only have all three of those strategies met, but it would also ask students to help participate in creating even more opportunities for engagement. And it would really make sure that that course was accessible to students no matter their learning style, no matter any learning challenges that they may face, or any additional technology or resources that they're using to participate in the course, such as something like a screen reader. Fourth, we have diversity and inclusion. Students should be able to analyze how diversity improves learning in classrooms, workplaces, and communities. Courses that are exemplary in this area also have activities that demonstrate students' diverse identities, backgrounds, cultures, and helps those students know that that's valuable. So this criteria really asks faculty to think about the way in which their courses ask students to reflect on their background and share that and embrace one another's experiences and really come to that conversation from a place of strength and being open-minded and supporting one another and really embracing those different rich experiences that contribute to every student's learning. Fifth, we have images and representation. Students analyze how images and representations impact inequalities. And courses that are exemplary in this area, they also have the opportunity for students to analyze images, but within the content of the course, there should be a range of images of people from all different backgrounds and resources from authors from all different cultures and different fields of experience, so that students can see not only how they as a classroom are diverse, but also see how that's reflected in their field of study. And that really creates a lot of inclusion. And when students see themselves reflected in the work that they're studying, they have more confidence that they are in the right place and that they too can learn this content. We also have human bias. This is a particularly interesting criteria because it as you can see, maybe from the rubric, it starts to dig a little bit deeper as you move through it and become, in some ways, more abstract and really that much more high level. And when it comes to human bias, what we're really asking for faculty to do with this rubric is give students an opportunity to analyze bias as part of their course activities. And of course, that starts with the instructor. So as we dive deeper into what we did in our own course, you'll learn that one of the ways that we helped faculty level up to this particular criteria is to really unpack what is bias and where does it come from? Because until you've acknowledged that for yourself as a faculty member or whatever your role is on campus, you can't possibly create assignments that challenge students to do so, right? And you want to be able to speak from your own experience because we all have bias. And it's best to put that out on the table and talk about where that comes from so that we can consciously work against it. The final two criteria are my two favorite: content meaning, which really asks for faculty to create course content that is valuable to students no matter their path. Students should be able to connect course content to their identities, their backgrounds and cultures, and their identities and their future careers, as well as their personal lives. So making sure that content is meaningful really does help students feel that much more included in the course space, whether or not they've taken the class because it's required for their major, or they just wanted to try something different. They should be able to apply that to their personal lives and feel that it's relevant. And finally, connection and belonging. With connection and belonging, we're asking faculty to make sure that their classes are inclusive through the means of creating interactions among students. Of course, we expect that faculty are engaging with their students, but what are the ways in which the class asks students to engage with one another and their outside community? What kind of service learning projects are available within your field that you can bring into your classroom so that students are making connections with the course content in their daily lives? So I know that was really fast, but we wanted to make sure that we are all starting from the same page with regards to this rubric, so we can talk to you about ways in which we've decided to evolve it. So I'm going to return to my slide deck and talk through just some of the things we noticed as we were looking through this rubric, things you're probably noticing yourself as we've reviewed it. And if someone could put the link to the rubric in the chat, if we haven't already, that would be great. I know there's some folks who probably want to dig a little bit deeper. So what did we notice? We noticed that this tool is an incredible resource that touches on elements of courses that are rarely addressed in common rubrics. So I mentioned earlier, we have the CVCI rubric, which is a standard rubric within community colleges here in California. We also have things like Quality Matters and dozens of others. Oftentimes there's a mention of accessibility, but not often equity specifically. And accessibility is just part of equity, right? And so what we really liked about this rubric is that it puts equity at the forefront. And for those of you that want to learn more about the Peralta Online Equity Rubric, know that there's also a Peralta Online Equity Training, and it's available through Creative Commons. If Canvas is your learning management system, you can get free access to it. You can also reach out to myself or any one of the conference organizers at Peralta to learn more about this training. But that really takes this rubric and allows participants in that training to dive deeper into the criteria, really unpack ways they can apply it to their courses. And that is just another resource out there that really helps establish the foundation of the research behind each of these criteria and why we know that they will make an impact on students. Having acknowledged all this, we also wanted to note that, unfortunately, the rubric is mainly intended for faculty, and the language within the rubric addresses all of this criteria as it relates to coursework. And so my colleagues and I at MVC thought that there might be a couple ways in which we could make this even more inclusive. Rachel?
Thanks, Brielle. Okay, so now that we have a really great review of the rubric and you've got it there in the chat, just want to encourage you to utilize it, and share it, right, with colleagues and others. And so how did we manage this adaptation, right? Bringing in staff and administrators' perspectives. So while we were collaborating on ideas, our team, Brielle, Jimmy, and myself, how to develop this C.A.R.E course, and you'll hear more about the pilot in just a little bit. We wanted to keep the equity rubric in mind ourselves, right, in our own processes. And I think that is something that is sticking, because we can tend to compartmentalize things. Whereas we want to be thinking about equity and being culturally responsive in all of the work that we do, right? Not in just one lesson or in one aspect of our work. And so while we were collaborating on this process, we saw that while being inclusive for all stakeholders is key, right? So there's really no other way to move forward other than to include all of the roles that we can, right, on campus in their work, because we're all touching students' lives, impacting them in different ways. And so closing equity gaps is about caring, right? Caring for our students. And when we don't do the work of closing those equity gaps, we're telling students that they don't belong, right? oh, if you're not, you don't have access to this technology or to this resource, or we're only showing, certain ethnicity in our images, right? We're telling everyone else, well, you don't belong. And so, not for the reason of, well, then we want to show students that they belong, so we increase numbers in our seats and increase enrollments. No, that's not the reason. It's because it's the right thing. It's because in our humanity, we want to show that we care about people. When we solve equity gaps, when we address equity gaps, then we're going to be addressing other issues as well. Because in so many ways, we're telling students they don't belong when we're not closing those equity gaps, when we're not being mindful and considerate of all, and assuming that we just know, right? That we have the answers, and we've always done it this way and it's always worked. Well, does it? And is it? And does everyone feel that way? We won't know if we don't ask. So we wanted to ask. And something, even preparing for this meeting, something I really appreciated about our teamwork and process, Brielle said, yeah, Jimmy, talk about the challenges, because you'll hear from Jimmy. We came across some challenges. Let's just not skip over that. Let's talk about that, because it's not easy, right? We tend to stick to what we know or what's worked and just stay there. And sometimes there's, oh, we've never done that before, right? So this isn't, well, how can we? What can we do, right? And so one example of that, with changing and adding staff and administrators, for our pilot, we wanted to include staff and administrators, right? To get their feedback, get their input, their ideas on how to continue to adapt the rubric so that we're not leaving anyone out and they can apply this to their work and their role for student success as well, right? Well, we receive funding. Well, how do we do this? That hasn't happened before. So we had to talk to different people. We had to figure some things out. We have a very supportive administration at our college that I'm deeply grateful for. C.A.R.E is here today, and really our whole sidekick team. Thank you, C.A.R.E, for being here. C.A.R.E Patterson, our DE chair, that continue to help us and encourage us to find the funding to talk to the right people. So if you're here today and you're thinking, I would like to bring something like this to my college, right? I would like to do that. You might come across some hurdles, but we just want to encourage you. And if we can be of any help, we'll put our contact info in the chat. It was on the first slide, but we can add that in. And if we can help, we'd be happy to, because we also received quite a bit of help, right, guys, in our process. So during the pilot, we requested feedback from our participants, right? Not assuming we had all the answers. We've got the rubric, right? Here we go. We said, what do you think, right? We got their feedback and we implemented it during the pilot. So they were able to see, that their time, it wasn't wasted. They were very invested and engaged in the work. And we were able to just make it even better, because together we're better, getting their perspectives, their ideas as well. So what else did we do? Well, C.A.R.E framework, right? If we start with the why, and again, just thinking back on the work we together as a team, what is the why, right? And what is C.A.R.E itself? So C.A.R.E, right here, you can see cultivating. What are we cultivating? And that was kind of our theme, right? A lot of gardening and a lot of tools and soil, and how do we reach all the students and see which one needs to be watered, right? Cultivating C.A.R.E. So being culturally responsive, it's a commitment to developing pedagogy and work practices, right? In any area, any role that recognizes the importance of including students, all students, unique, diverse cultural references in all aspects of learning, and impacting students wherever we can. So this could be from the welcome letter to the syllabus, and even our advertising for, flyers for the college, and for welcome back to school events, and even, virtually, right? We've got now an increase in our virtual outreach to students. And so images, representation, that's an example. Anti-racism. Dr. Kendi has his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. We bring this up in the course, right? It's not enough to say, I'm not racist. that that's not enough. What type of work is being done to dismantle racism actively, right? And so we're talking about that, and everyone can get involved in this. No one is left out of this. And so we talk about this in the course. Equity, what does it mean? Not equal necessarily. How do we break that down, right? Those that identifying those students that need more resources and plugging in, reaching in, leaning in, giving them those resources. But we've got to ask. If we don't ask, how do we know, right? And so where does that work begin? And so we talk about equity and equitable practices. And so you see this quote by the great Dr. King, right? He says, it's a commitment to the noble struggle for equal rights, knowing this work starts with a change from within and has the power to impact our students, our community, and our world, right? He says, commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a greater person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a final world to live in. We have to also remember our why, because going on to the next slide, our why. Sometimes, why do we forget our why? I mean, why do we forget our why? We're passionate about students. We care about students, but what are some of the issues there? You know, we talk about self-care in this course. Self-care, why is that important? Understanding burnout. Anybody been feeling burnout in this pandemic? Anyone here? Anyone at all, right? Sometimes we're so overwhelmed that it can become difficult, right, now to pour into others because we're truly, our cup is empty. And so those are foundations and first steps, and so critical and important, and we bring that in. So it closes equity gaps, models advocacy to students, right? That this is important. This work is important. We encourage, you know, not just the faculty, staff, administrators, when they can, where they can, to make a statement on anti-racism, right? Be inclusive of everyone. And so you're modeling then advocacy to students. And then what are the processes when you know, issues arise, right? Conflicts arise regarding racism, regarding equity issues. What are we doing, right, in our roles to model what advocacy looks like, leaning in, right? It guides the educator and really everyone who's involved here, staff, admin, to self-reflect, to move to action, and then encourages all of us to be agents for positive change in our areas of practices. And this does impact our communities because we're impacting our students are impacting their communities. We are impacting the world, and we have to remember our why. And so if you could share in the chat, you know, and take a minute to think about it and share, what is your why? Why does C.A.R.E, you know, when we're talking about being culturally responsive, anti-racist, and equity, why does this matter to you, right? And why is it important for your students? If you could share in the chat, just as we're continuing, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much.
It's Rachel.
Yeah,
Thank you
with
so
Jimmy.
All right, so thank you very much, Brielle and Rachel, for really setting up, providing context and background for the course that we developed. And so I just want to spend a few minutes talking about how we took, we adapted the Peralta Equity Rubric and then created out of that in a course that is fully online through Canvas for faculty, staff, and administrators. And I'll just say that the three of us kind of got together as sidekicks. So at Moreno Valley College, we have really excellent resources for online teaching, and there's a group of part-time and full-time faculty who are faculty support for other faculty doing online course work. And so the three of us wanted to work on an equity project. And so this began as an equity module, which would be in the DE Den, which is a place where we house all kinds of resources for distance education for faculty here at the college. And so we developed a module, which is really just a place with resources and information related to the C.A.R.E principles of the C.A.R.E model. But that's really kind of an asynchronous, it's quick. The module has multiple pages related to equity and so on. There's theoretical background content, research resources and such, but we wanted to develop something that was interactive and collaborative. And so the course itself is a 5-week interactive and facilitated course, which is in Canvas. And we worked for nearly a year working on revising, editing, creating all of this content. And so in the fall of 2021, which is what I'm speaking about right now, was when we implemented a pilot for this course. So the course is fully developed and ready to go at the end of last summer. And then the 3 of us facilitated a 5-week pilot. We recruited, we talked up the course for a very long time. We got a lot of interest from faculty. Actually, we had 11 participants, but I'm trying to think, Brielle and Rachel, how many people were
I have an
interested.
appointment with Stephanie Allen.
Oh, so we had an application.
11.
We wanted to get representation across the campus community of not just faculty who are part-time and full-time. So we're not only having full-time faculty, but we wanted representation of part-time and full-time, but we also had pretty equal balance of faculty, staff, and administrators. And so to go back to this discussion of expanding the rubric to include not just teaching equity and online teaching, but also in all the work and practices we engage in with students across campus. We were very fortunate to apply for and receive funding from SEA, which is the Student Equity Achievement Committee at Moreno Valley College, so that we were able to provide a stipend for participants because they committed a lot of time and gave us a lot of feedback for participating. So again, talking about equity, talking about the importance of representation. So that's a big part, and we're very grateful for that funding. Okay, so the course itself, again, 5 weeks, it involves weekly modules. The modules are all really formatted similar to one another, but they include reading. So we developed and kind of adapted content as well. So we have a lot of like explanation of, defining terms, concepts, giving resources, examples, all of that. So there's definitely a lot of learning that takes place in each of the weekly modules. It also includes video content. So we have either embedded or linked videos and resources related to each page's content. And we also had weekly discussions and weekly assignments. So we had discussion forums where participants, students in the pilot posted and engaged with each other. We also had weekly assignments. We'll talk about a little bit more on the next page. But each of the weeks was kind of chunked, taking 2 of the 8 criteria from the Peralta rubric. And so each rubric criteria is discussed in depth. So say, the first is technology. So we went in the order of how they're presented on the rubric. And it covers the what is equity and technology, why it matters, who it impacts, and how we can move that into practice in our work, whether it is, of course, teaching, or if it's counseling students, or if it's being an administrator, a dean, and so on, and how it should be applied across the campus. And then assignments were really scaffolded. So we had weekly assignments that built upon the next, but each of the assignments, again, was asking participants to take the 2 criteria from that week, build it into an assignment. We'll just talk a little bit more with examples. And the really cool thing, again, to get at what we were trying to do here with adapting the rubric was nothing is a one-size-fits-all. And of course, in the course design and implementation, we were also really focused on equity too. So the different prompts for assignments relate to the work that the individual taking the course does, their faculty, staff, or admin. And I'll also say, before I carry on talking too much, that we even have one of our pilot, maybe more than one, participants in this session. So I'm super grateful for their time and commitment to being part of that course. Okay, so we had at the end kind of this culminating milestone capstone assignment, which was due the final week. And this involved revising the assignments throughout those two pathways, whether or not the participant chose faculty pathway or staff and administrator. Now for faculty, each of the weekly assignments was asking them to revise a different portion or section of their course syllabus. So, a big part of this course was like, it needs to be applicable. Like we didn't, it's not just theoretical, conceptual, what is equity and so on, but like, how can we do it like in our courses, in the work we're doing right away? And so every faculty member that would participate in this, this course walks away with a newly designed, edited, revised syllabus, which tackles each of those 8 criteria. And so that was what they pulled together at the end. For the staff and administrator pathway, we were asking them throughout the duration of the course to reimagine a welcome back event or some other event that might be applicable. So maybe in their role, they do, a first year experience event every year. So of course, if it's something that they're already working on, we wanted them to focus on that, not just create like a theoretical event. And so they kind of went through the stages each week with looking at those criteria, and then at the end, revise that. We also had a group assignment where participants worked in pairs and discussed their step-by-step process when supporting a student using the C.A.R.E framework. So we did a lot of group work as well. I'm trying to think of what else. There's so much great things we did. We had weekly optional like synchronous Zoom meetings, which were really important in this course, especially because it was a pilot for the 3 of us facilitators to meet face-to-face with the participants, get their feedback in real time, have discussions on the work that they're doing. And also say, throughout, it was a pilot and we learned so much from the participants. Certainly, they kind of had multiple roles as both a participant in the course, learning themselves and creating the assignments and content, but also giving us feedback. So we had feedback forms and, always being equity minded. So the 3 of us, we had broken links, we had, videos that weren't captioned, we had, images that and content that couldn't be, maybe accessible with the screen reader. I mean, we of course worked through a lot of that in advance, but it was a really great opportunity for us to get rich feedback throughout. And then in the course, participants had opportunities to revise and resubmit based on feedback. So, it was always supported throughout. Nothing was, we didn't want anyone to get anything less than exceptional on the weekly assignments and their final capstone, because the goal was for them to walk away with something substantial to add to the work they're doing. And then we had surveys and free response opportunities to give feedback to us as course designers, which we then, after the pilot ended in the fall, we spent a few months looking at all that feedback and doing a big overhaul and revisions on the course. It's definitely not the same course it was today that it was before the pilot. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a glimpse, but hopefully we do have some time to take a peek in there if any of you are interested in looking at some of the content in the course.
Great, thanks so much, Jimmy. So that's a nice high-level understanding of how we adapted the rubric and the Peralta Online Equity Training to become this now C.A.R.E training, more inclusive of staff and administrators. And for those of you that are familiar with the Peralta Online Equity Training, a lot of this will feel consistent, right? Diving into the criteria week by week, and then having assignments where you can build on a particular element of your course or a project you're working on in one of your other roles, so that at the end, you've completely revised that piece of content so that it's more equitable. And that having that deliverable is something that was really important to us. So thanks for walking us through that, Jimmy. We are always ambitious with our time. So we wanted to share with you a couple of examples specifically of how we took a piece of criteria. I'm just going to go over one rather than both today, since I know we want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. So just for example's sake, when we think about the first criteria, technology, which I went over earlier, the main takeaway is that this criterion asks instructors, and it's in our case, staff and administrators, to clearly delineate the technology that will be used and provide ample explanations and resources for students in case there's issues or they have questions about that technology. Within the content that what, how, who, and why that we go over, and the video content, what we're really unpacking is the different research around how technology has been a barrier with regards to equity for students in the past. So we find terms like digital redlining and digital literacy and ask the participants to really unpack the impact that's had on them personally and how they can see that showing up in their courses or courses they've been a part of. We give a lot of examples of how to level up with regards to your technology. So we give ideas for faculty on how they can use technology to meet students where they are, using things like social media and assignments, and making sure that students can easily access that social media so they can participate in said assignment. We encourage staff and administrators to openly discuss why services are being moved online or how services can be accessed online, particularly in light of the pandemic, as campuses were closed, but students still needed to contact financial aid. They still needed to get help from the library, right? This was a really great opportunity to practice this, practice what we preach with regards to making sure students understood there's still a virtual way to have this engagement. But of course, walking students through that is really key because every website looks different. Every campus has a different portal. There's 15 different logons you have for everything you have to do, from applying to the college, to enrolling in the course, to submitting to an assignment, to getting your transcripts, right? And it's really important that we're all thinking about that collective experience that student has with all those different technology points. And if even just one is broken, that student might feel defeated, right? And not feel as though college is a place for them. So really unpacking that is what we did in this course. We have a lot of other examples, of course. And then with regards to the assignment that Jimmy was hinting towards, we would ask participants to think about the technology that's involved in the work that they do and try to modify it, and then present some piece of content that displays how they've modified it in light of equity. And if that content didn't already exist, we'd give them a couple of prompts of things they could create. For faculty, we went off the course syllabus, knowing that every course will have a syllabus, but for staff and administrators, we asked them to think about other student-facing content or activities that they have on campus or services that they provide. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a deeper understanding of how we took the criteria and walked our participants through it and gave them the opportunity to apply it to their work. And we're going to skip the second example just in light of time and talk a little bit about how we wrap things up and where we are now. And I think I'm giving it back to Jimmy.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about. So what are participants saying? So as part of the pilot, of course, we wanted to get a lot of feedback throughout the entire pilot. We were always asking for feedback. And then at the end, and so I don't know if we have to, I mean, you can see these quotes, but these are from two of our participants in the program. So Professor Darylyn Evans said, "This course is challenging our ways of teaching and thinking. It helps us evaluate what the needs of students are in this diverse world in which we live and operate. It's fulfilling when you're able to put into practice what you have discussed with peers and hear those in the field who are actually doing it." So I won't read the whole quote, you can see it here, but I will say that especially Darylyn, like we had so many champions from this pilot program who were still speaking highly of it, but was just a collaboration to create a space where a part-time faculty member can be meeting with a dean or a director of a program in the same discussion every week, talking about equity and the work that they're doing and exchanging ideas and giving examples, having that conversation, those conversations that we oftentimes don't get to have. And so even as facilitators, we were really happy and fortunate. So we're happy to get this feedback. Philosophy faculty member said, "C.A.R.E course is thoughtfully constructed by members of our own community and offers ample opportunities for creative engagement with the material. Regardless of discipline, the various projects and feedback received from facilitators and other participants provide a solid understanding of what equity means at the practical level of course design." So, out of this quote, I mean, again, positive, but from the MVC community. So this course was created by and is for our community members. So even the examples that we give throughout the course, resources that we give, oftentimes we're connecting it to like student resources on campus, trying to make it really applicable to the work that we're all doing. So that was, it's definitely a big plus as well. Okay, applying the feedback, revising the course. All right, so we, as I mentioned, we revised the content assignments. We spent really the winter term working on that, looking at participant feedback. a big challenge that we had was the staff and admin example. So we're sitting here today telling you how we adapted the Peralta Equity Rubric, but it's really strong in the faculty part, right? So it is about online teaching. And so we're still working to kind of, oh, we went ahead. Okay, we're still working to, there we go. Okay, we're still working to develop and work on those examples. Okay, what are we working on forward? We want to offer this course regularly. That's our plan, is to make it each semester to have a new cohort of participants. And one of our big challenges, which of course we don't have much time to talk about, is funding, is having this be sustainable as part of our offerings for equity training. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
I didn't realize we're on time. Wait, where are we at? Okay, yeah, we definitely want to have to go for it.
Hopefully people got a chance to sort of see the ways in which we're looking to revise the course, but this really is where we want to open it up to ideas and feedback. And so I'll let Rachel talk us through the opportunity to gather feedback now, both here in our chat and our discussion, but also online.
Yes, thank you. So I know things are moving rather quickly. We could stay here all day and talk to you about this. It's just been very impactful and very meaningful for us, for our students, our colleagues. So there's a link there. So if you could either now or please at some point, let us know what did you like? What do you think we could improve just based off of what you've heard today? Would you like to collaborate with us in the future? Do you know of any resources as well? I mean, we'll be looking now for grant funding and trying to figure out how we can sustain this. Our college has officially adopted the Peralta Equity Rubrics, so we're very excited about that. And now we need to look for funding. So if you have resources on that, or if you'd like to just further collaborate with us, please let us know. And thank you so much for being with us today. We truly appreciate your time. And how much time do we have left? Does anyone have questions? Are we at 2:45 mark here? A little over, huh?
Yeah, I think for those of you that are interested in sticking around to ask questions, we are certainly here until they kick us out. But if you could just grab this link and take it with you as you move on to the rest of the conference and the rest of your week, we would really appreciate any feedback and the opportunity to collaborate. We think that this rubric and this course really are things that can be adapted and modified for your own institutions, and we'd love to help you with that and continue to learn how we can all, in all of our roles on campus, help to make campus a safer, more welcome place for all our students. So happy to stick around for a couple minutes. Last couple slides are just to encourage you to take the survey, make the rubric your own on your own campus, and stay connected. Again, my name is Brielle Plump. I was joined by James, Bany, and Rachel Dyer, and thank you so much for being here.
I'm going to wrap things up, and then I'm going to let the three panelists hang around. I just want to remind you that the Padlet link is in the chat, so if you want to continue the conversation, that it's another way to do that. And don't forget, social media is also available. Thank you, Rachel, Jimmy, and Brielle, for such an amazing presentation. Rachel used the words impactful and meaningful, and I want to add, for me, it was so inspirational. For someone who has been working with Peralta Equity Rubric, it's so awesome to see that it has expanded to include administration and staff, and I just love to see the direction that this is going. I think it was Irina who asked the question if this was available, and she especially addressed student services. So if there's any way that we can kind of get a hold of that document of what you did, I would so love it, because I can see its value going, like you said, going beyond the classroom. So thank you so much. I'm glad I was here to witness this.
Yeah,
thank you for your encouragement.
Thank you all very much.
I put one of my many personal email addresses in the chat, so feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, we're just excited that this was inspirational to folks and hope that we can stay connected.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Rachel, for putting your email in there. what presentation is next in this Zoom room? Cheryl, do you know?
Oh, yeah, hold on a second. Let me check.
Because we can all just hang out and come to the next one, huh?
Let's see, that's 3:45 in room. Hold on a second.
Oh, no problem. I see
Okay,
there's still folks in the room that do ask questions.
It's addressing ableism with empathy in the classroom.
Awesome.
And the person presenting is Precious Golden. That should be pretty cool. So DDIM will be back and she'll moderate that one.
Great.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so
Oh
much.
gosh, I'm well, because I know Brielle, this was the one I signed up for first. But plus, Brielle, I've been hearing you talk about this, and it was really good for me to see what you put so much work into, along with your colleagues, and just to see what it was all about. It's interesting that I think it was Chelsea who wrote an introduction to our online equity course, and she was saying in the intro that yes, this is for instructors, but it needs to go beyond. And then you actually took that introduction and put some wings to it. So that's very nice.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny because I remember having my first meetings with Rachel and James and the rest of our team over at MVC. And I was just like, let's just do this rubric. We've got this training. It's ready to go. Let's just do it. And, you know, I think both Rachel and James really took the initiative to say, but like, if we have this opportunity to make it our own, let's really take it and find a way to expand it. So I really have to give them kudos for pushing me beyond what felt comfortable to me. And it would have been easy to implement and like slow down and really think about like, what is at the heart of this? And that's inclusivity. And so that we took that time to make it something that had a broader reach. And so I have to just give them so many kudos.